and Sheamus beat Matt Riddle to qualify in what was easily the best match on the show. Which brings me to the news that Matt Riddle is no longer Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle will now be simply going by the name Riddle. Vince McMahon gave us back Chad Gable, but he took Matt Riddle's first name as his new hostage. I give it a few weeks before they add the letter R to the end of his name. Just go all the way with it. You know that Vince McMahon has been dying to probably do this since he first met the guy. He'll have the little eye mask on with the green suit and the question marks. His promos will consist of nothing but shitty riddles written by the creative team. Riddle me this, riddle me that. How much time is left on my contract? Now, he supposedly, if reports from a few years ago are to be believed, for people wondering how much time is left on Matt Riddle's contract, my understanding is that he had signed a 3-year deal back in 2018, which, if that's accurate, would mean that next year could be his final year. But we don't know if when he got called up to the main roster, he signed a new deal. So we don't know how much time Matt Riddle actually has left on his contract. According to Meltzer, this is his hypothesis here. I don't know that I completely buy into this, but according to him, the reason for the name change has to do not with any kind of dissatisfaction with his character or anything like that, but it has to do with not wanting people to Google his name, to Google the name Matt Riddle, and find all of the lawsuits against him and the company, all the stories about the lawsuits and the accusations. Riddle himself, later on, tweeted that he has been called Riddle most of his life, and it's okay. He doesn't mind it. He actually kind of prefers it, which is exactly what I would expect him to say, as opposed to, hey, we don't want people Googling me and reading about the sexual assault that I have been accused of. That just doesn't have the same ring to it. I wouldn't expect Matt Riddle to come out and say that. If you have somebody on your television show who has been sued for sexual assault, you've got bigger problems than worrying about people Googling them. I've heard of some stupid name changes, but this is among the dumbest that I have ever heard. Just because of how unnecessary it is. If you are that concerned about having somebody on your show who has been accused of sexual assault, the answer is not to take away the person's first name to try to fool people, because you're not fooling anybody. The answer is not to take away their first name to try to fool people. If you are truly that concerned, then you take him off of television until this is all resolved. The problem is, this could go on for years. You don't know how long it's going to take to get this resolved. Who's telling the truth, what the end result is going to be. So if not, then just stop fucking with people's names for no reason. You're not fooling anybody. I don't even necessarily buy that as the real reason. Vince McMahon has done this to countless other people for years now. Why all of a sudden are we supposed to believe that they took his first name away because of all of the accusations? He has done this with countless other people for years, chopping off their first names. Now, some people get them back. Mustafa Ali. He was very upset that they took the name away, and it was months of Ali, and then eventually he got his name back. Maybe he fought for it. Others are not so lucky. And frankly, a lot of them, you know what? You end up getting used to it in time. Alexander Rusev just became Rusev, and after a while, people didn't really think about it. Antonio Cesaro became Cesaro. After a while, people didn't think about it. Some of them might even be better without it, like Murphy. Instead of being Buddy Murphy, now he's just Murphy. I actually thought that was an improvement when they made that change. But that does not mean it is not batshit insane that he keeps doing this. The nicknames are bad enough. I'm at least glad it sounds like they've dropped the whole bodacious barefoot bro. We went through that period for a few weeks. I haven't heard them mention that name in a while. Matt Riddle, he's the bodacious barefoot bro. Cowabunga! It seems like they've dropped that. Maybe when they filmed the Netflix documentary about him, we'll get some insight into what Vince McMahon has against first people's names. There's got to be some kind of deep-rooted issue here. Did he get picked on at school by a bully that only had one name? Riddle. The man's brain is riddled with holes. And I will end my Raw thoughts by actually saying something nice. You know, I used to have a segment here on the podcast called Say Something Nice About Impact. I may have to bring it back, but for Raw instead. Alexa Bliss, I think, has been fantastic in this new role of hers as the follower of the Fiend. She was on the Funhouse this week. She hosted a moment of bliss at the end of the show with Randy Orton. I think that she is killing it in this role, and it is the most interesting thing on the entire show. Orton knew the Fiend was near. He wouldn't let his guard down. He wouldn't sit down. He was looking around. Drew McIntyre came out. The two of them fought. Alexa Bliss is sitting on top of the rope. She's on the top turnbuckle, sitting there laughing and watching them fight. And the lights went out. When they came on, Randy was in the aisle. Drew was still in the ring. But then behind Orton was the Fiend. And he knew it. He wouldn't turn around, but he knew it. And instead of turning around and being attacked by the Fiend, he opted to walk back to the ring, where Drew McIntyre was waiting, and the two of them continued to fight. The Fiend disappeared. We never saw him again after that. I don't know where he went. But Orton and McIntyre were fighting. And I believe the final scene, this did not air on USA, but it is on the YouTube clip, because I think they went off the air a little bit early. But the show actually ended with Drew McIntyre taking a pen. He had Orton laid on the announce desk. He took a pen, and he tried to gouge his eyes out with the pen. And that's where the show ended. What is it with people trying to gouge other people's eyeballs out on this show? I can understand the viewers wanting to gouge out their own eyeballs given the quality of some of these shows. But the wrestlers, that I don't understand. So the match at Survivor Series is Randy Orton, the WWE Champion, against Roman Reigns as the Universal Champion. This here, if you look at the end of the show, this looked like it was building to a triple threat with Orton, McIntyre, and The Fiend. So, what I would have done, this would be the year to not do champion versus champion, non-title. And instead, I would have had Orton defend against Drew and The Fiend, and have Roman Reigns maybe defend against Daniel Bryan, which they planted the seed for already on SmackDown this week. I guess now it wouldn't make much sense because Daniel Bryan lost at the end of the show, but I would have rather seen that than just doing a random match between Orton and Roman Reigns, which you know is probably not going to have a clean finish anyway.